Hey, listeners. My name is Elisha, the founder of the Witnesses podcast. It's so beautiful to have you listening to our podcast. And I want you to know something that means a whole lot to me. Thank you for tuning in. And one thing I love to tell all of our listeners is it's not just about you listening, but listening to understand. Understanding is the most important thing. So important. So, you have to listen, learn, and practice. Thank you so very much and happy listening.
Hi, Nicole. It's so nice to have you on the show. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
That's so good. Okay, so oftentimes I love to talk about the essence of this show, which is to invite amazing guests like Nicole to come talk to us about their triumphant stories. Why is that? The reason is we believe that in our audience there might be someone, okay, who is stuck up in a situation that you came out of triumphantly. So, but that
hmm
person listening to you speak, he or she might actually pick an information that will lead to the transformation. So that's basically the essence of the show. Okay, Nicole. So within the next few minutes, let us get
Awesome.
Okay, started Nicole. So within the next few minutes, let us get started with your story, the
With your
challenges that you
story,
faced,
the challenges that you faced,
and how you overcame them.
and how you overcame them.
And
Yeah.
afterwards,
And
So,
afterwards,
I've got some beautiful
I've
questions for
got some
you.
beautiful questions for you.
oh, great. I'm
All
excited.
right.
Well, I guess a good way to start out is that I am married, have been married for about 14 years, and I have two beautiful little girls. About 5 years into our marriage, we had our first little one, and she was such a joy, one of the happiest little babies you could ever imagine. And it was such a joyful experience to be entered into a new world of motherhood. I understood female strength before, but when I labored for 29 hours, totally unmedicated, pushed for 15 minutes, almost break every blood vessel in my face, bringing life into the world, I say I'm kind of like transported into a world of technicolor from black and white. It was a very empowering experience for me. And so, around 1 year of life for our oldest, we decided we wanted to have another one. And what we thought would be an easy experience turned out to be not so much. I experienced a physical ailment that would have essentially put me not only in mind bending pain, but had the unfortunate side effect of infertility. So I would experience infertility for about 3 years, and as I often say, pain is a great motivator. I actively seek solutions to this ailment that would take me out of pain, but physically, but also spiritually, because anybody that knows what it is to go through infertility, it is a very challenging emotional and spiritual experience. So I started to alleviate some of the symptoms, which kind of transported me into a new season of miscarriages. And unfortunately, I was losing um, babies for consistently for about a year, and what I thought was a challenging period of infertility, I was not prepared for that season of miscarriages. So thankfully, I continued down that path for healing, and I ended up conceiving my second daughter. Her resilience was proven from the very start. She stuck around for the long haul, and at 37 weeks gestation, I would go into labor at the height of COVID. And the thing with COVID, I don't know how it is around the world, but here in the United States, we had limitations to access to medical care. So if you were considered low risk, everything was telehealth or curbside service, and I really do mean that. Like we went and got prenatal in parking garages, and of all medical or really any curbside service, I think gynecological is just not a curbside service type thing. So it was just it was very challenging. So my 36-week test didn't happen because of COVID restrictions, which meant that when I went into labor, they didn't want to introduce an infection. So in a 27 hours, they touched me very minimal. So around 37 hours and it's still a completely unmedicated labor, they found out I had what they call a prolapse cord. Prolapse cord is when the umbilical cord comes out in advance of the baby and pinches off oxygen flow. She immediately is going into distress. And again, I hadn't been touched for a while, so they decided to check me, realize I have the prolapse cord. They sound these alarms. People are running in. Everybody's jumping on the gurney. We're being rushed to the OR. I am just absolutely out of my mind and panic. Like, what is happening? Everything was fine, and everything's not fine. And I am, when you don't have an epidural, you're put under general anesthesia. So within 10 minutes, they've ripped her out of me. I'm not there, obviously conscious, but my husband's not there because our daughter is suffocating to death. So I wake up in the OR and I have no child. And they don't really explain to me why. They just were just left in the recovery room for hours. And I'm like high out of my mind. Little known is that when you come out of anesthesia without an epidural, you feel everything, like everything that just happened to you. So they try to give you narcotics to catch up with the pain so that you can, but it just never did. So I ended up having to go off of narcotics, and I ended up doing the whole thing cold turkey, just with just some Tylenol, which was just wild. But yeah, I mean, it took 4 days for them to realize that this was not good. So she, in that 4 day period of recovery, she's displaying really erratic behavior. She looks like she's having seizures. She can't latch for nursing, suck and swallow. Her eyes are rolling in the back of her head. She's hardly able to wake up. And when she does, she's erratic, all these crazy things. And again, COVID meant that nobody was allowed to visit. We weren't, all restaurants were closed. Yeah, it was a very isolating season. And so we're transferred into NICU, which is what happens here in the US when essentially your kid's in medical distress. And we're put into a month period of exploratory. So they do every test known to mankind, spinal taps, like brain scans, like everything. And we leave NICU not really knowing, at least them not really explaining, I'll be honest. They didn't really explain a whole lot. In fact, they never told me that when she was born, again, I wasn't, conscious. My husband wasn't there, that she was born not breathing. And they had to literally bring the breath back into her lungs in order for her to live. And I feel like that's something you should probably tell the parent. But they did. Yeah. So how I found out that she was resuscitated was over nursing shift change. They kind of give you like a lowdown of medical history. I'm like, you resuscitated her? Like, they didn't tell me this. And then I think a day later I had it confirmed in insurance that was like $736 for resuscitation of newborn infant. That was a line item on our insurance. It was like, oh my gosh. So what would happen is essentially we'd be kind of, they have a requirement to leave NICU that you have certain standards, right? They need to be able to self-feed and maintain, like continue to breathe on their own. So they gave us a gastric tube. So we put her into surgery, and they attach the stomach and the abdominal wall together. They puncture a hole and they put a tube because everything that was coming through her mouth were going into her lungs. And also she had issues with breathing, but she was able to, keep it together long enough for us to get home. And it was just a very isolating period too, because, nobody really could help. No family could come, no friends could come clean your house or bring you food. People would ask me, how can we help you? And I was so overwhelmed at this point the fact that they asked what they could do was another task. I was so consumed with trying to keep her alive, breath in her lungs, food in her body, very intense, isolating, depressed state in which I really can't really describe, because it was this sort of a time warp. You're so detached from the situation that you're just taking like the tasks one at a time to get through a 24-hour block at a time. That's all we could do, because she was on a pump, like, and I had to have monitors all the time. So she was fed 24/7, and I had to pump the milk for me, fortify it, put it into a pump it into her, and that was just like on cycle 24/7. And so, about 6 months in, we would be given the formal diagnosis of cerebral palsy. And for those of you who don't know what that is, essentially it's a neuromuscular disorder that is often it's derived from brain damage. Now, how you get the brain damage is it varies on cases, but in the instance of my daughter, she had low oxygen flow through her 27-hour labor, and then she suffocated. She was out without oxygen about 10-15 minutes. So that causes brain damage. And every case of CP is totally different. In the case of my daughter, she was unable to obviously self-feed. She couldn't suck, swallow. She had issues with breathing. She stopped breathing a lot. She can't talk. She can't walk. She's 4 years old now and is still battling through her own unique case. And I will say this, though. One thing that is very apparent and became very apparent through this process was that doctors only have educated guesses. They can only look at the damage on an MRI and tell you what might be. And they often will default towards the extreme case of that possible reality, right? She may never eat, she may never speak, she may never talk. And what I'll tell you is that today she is gastric tube free. She drinks on her own. She is working her hardest to be able to eat. Age appropriate, she should be able to eat pretty much anything. Her oral motor functions more like a 12-month-old. So, but she's getting there, and she tries so hard to talk. She actually speaks sign language. She's very, very smart. A lot of frustration for her because she was unable to communicate for a really long time, and she knows what's going on. It's very frustrating, I imagine, to have these thoughts and wants and desires and just want to get it out. But there's no way for her muscle. It affects her muscles. So even in her mouth, she can't form words. Now she can make sounds. Girl got some lungs. She can scream with the best of them. But she's frustrated. So, and then she walks with a little walker, little yellow walker, and she is just striving at her own rate. And we've learned through this process to every child is unique. That's the one thing that's not unique about children is they're all unique, right? So we're just taking it one step at a time and celebrating those tiny victories as they come. And we're just so glad that the breath is in her lungs, because it often wasn't.
Wow. Beautiful. Okay, so what's your daughter name? What's her name?
Her name is Cosette.
Cosette. Beautiful.
Yes.
Okay,
And it means victorious little one.
Okay, it means what?
Victorious little one.
Oh, victorious. Yeah, that's very correct. I love that name.
Yeah, we chose it for the meaning of it.
Yeah,
we believed that she would, and
beautiful. Say me hi to Cosette. Okay, so let us begin with the question.
Sure.
Can you talk more about pain? It says, How
says,
does
how
pain
does pain
breeds purpose
breeds purpose
and find joy?
and find joy?
Man, that is such a good question.
Thank you.
It is this weird dichotomy. I would say that pain is the greatest blessing for advancement, personal development. So, as human beings, we actually require pain in order to become better and more aware of who we are as people, our relationships with God, the world. It is an incredibly powerful tool that nobody wants to use. It's an awful thing, but it's so joyful. So I try to explain it like I have two daughters. One is totally normal path, one that it isn't. One that has a very distant relationship with pain, one that is very personal. And throughout our journey thus far, I really contemplated on that because I was told so often that my oldest daughter, her name is Ari, is the advantaged child. She is the one that is blessed because she doesn't have to experience pain in the way that my youngest Cosette does. And the reality is that actually Cosette is the blessed one because in life as a parent, I actually almost have to falsify an environment of pain in order for her to strive and through things because we need pain in order to push through in order to get advancements, right? So here I have two examples in which the world is saying the former, that the original easy street kind of kid is the advantaged one. In reality, my younger one that is living daily with pain um, is just this deeper understanding of what purpose is as a human being. That we're not supposed to seek out a life that is free from pain. We're supposed to live out a life that's capable of advancing through pain because we can never success ourselves out of pain. That's the reality. No matter how much money you have, no matter how beautiful like the scenario you're born into and how perfect it seems, we're often really just shocked to find out that no matter how much we have materially, pain still finds us. And if you're not able to have that pain in order to understand how to work through it, life gets really hard, even though it's really not that hard. You have everything you need, right? So, yeah, that was such a really great question.
A beautiful answer.
Beautiful answer.
Okay,
Oh,
so
thank you.
the last
Okay, so
question.
the last question.
How did you get
How did
into
you get into
human rights
human
work?
I love that question. So, my parents were very highly philanthropic minded, service minded. We worked with a lot of at risk youth that they did during my childhood. And so we just culturally, as a family, if someone needed help, you get up, you help, right? So, and joyfully, it wasn't an obligation, nothing forcible about it. So I think that that really laid a very solid foundation for what would be my career path. And I grew up, I went and got a master's in law and public policy and sort of ended up on the communication side of global human rights. And I've dealt with many different topics in many different parts of the world. And it really shined a light on the reality of the human condition is only influenced by the culture we're in. It doesn't really, like I said, pain. There's not a culture that pain is doesn't exist in, right? In struggle, it's just the way in which culture sort of manipulates human value and imposes different types of hardships on others. And that was a big lesson for me too, especially when, you know, we're all born into our own culture. We're all born into our own part of the world that God's placed us. You know, we're kind of in that shell. We don't understand what it's like in, you know, South America and Argentina, right? Like, I'm not from Argentina. I don't know what your hardships are. I don't know what it's like to be from Belgium. I don't know what it's like to be from Armenia. Like, you get what I mean. So, but hardship finds itself there too. And so I know that the best parts of life are when we serve and try our best to alleviate that pain that our people are experiencing all over the world, because their value, their dignity is equal. We're all equal inside God.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. We should stand up and strive to serve other people in the best way we can, because what else is there to live for? Like, I don't understand. Like, we should. So it's been such a joyful, a sad in some ways, but a very joyful career path that I've been very grateful for. Very, very grateful.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Beautiful.
Okay, so Nicole,
Okay, so Nicole,
in conclusion,
in conclusion,
let's say there is a piece of
let's say there
advice
is a piece of advice
that you would like to give to the
that you would like
audience.
to give to the audience.
What would that be?
What would that be?
And let's say there
And
are
let's say there are
some people
some people
who would like to reach out to
who would
you.
like to reach out to you.
How can that be possible?
How can that be possible?
I would say my biggest piece of advice, and trying to keep in context of what you were saying, is your mission, which is, if somebody is hearing this that is going through something similar, what is it that could bring you through another day? And oftentimes journeys like this, they are journeys. They're not an event that happens and then you're through it. Understand that the person you are after this event happened is a completely different person than the person before the event happened. We cannot look back at that person and try to strive to be that person again, because it cannot be. It never can be. You can only take that moment and step forward every single day with an understanding that it is a journey, and you're on this journey for the rest of your life. And if you were able to sit and examine the heartache that you're experiencing and allow it to be something to be examined, and give yourself opportunities to grieve, to think through the hardship that you're in, right? The more you examine that, is the more you can walk through past and find the joys in it. Because that was one big piece about my journey as a parent through the situation, was that my daughter didn't meet my expectations, and she can never meet my expectations, not in the way of like, hey, you give birth, it's normal, like. And I needed to be okay with grieving those dead expectations, explore them, because the problem is, if I sit in the grieving process too long, or don't examine the grieving process, don't like participate in it, then I will lose the joy that I was designed to have with my daughter, the unique joy that she can only bring. And so I really encourage you to like understand that you're a different person, and that person, though, is having a hard time and needs to sit and examine that grief and really process that grief. The person that's beyond it is going to be so much joyful and so much happier than you could have ever imagined, despite it. And honestly, because of it, it's a weird thing. So I do have a nonprofit that we're kind of like a bridge organization. We take struggles that are out there within culture, and we try to alleviate. Essentially, you have a struggle, like in my case, I'm a mother of a disabled child. We try to essentially like, hey, what's going on in your life, and what organizations out there can help meet your needs. So it's kind of a bridge between it, because I know that as a parent going through this, that is one of the hardest things. Like, I'm really struggling. I know there are people out there that really want to help me, but where do I find those people? So we're called Dignity Defense Institute, and you can find us at dignitydefense.org. And we also have a very similar podcast called Pro Dignity No Doubt, and we really highlight, you know, stories like mine, but also in trafficking, also in enslavement, also in, just all sorts of different really amazing stories of resilience, to give hope often as well. So, yeah, that's how you can find me.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
Thank you for your time,
Thank you
Nicole.
for your time.
It really means a
Yeah,
whole
thank
lot.
you.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's going to be the end of
So
the
that's
show.
going to be the end of the
Thank you
show.
for coming,
Thank
Thank you
Nicole.
for coming, Nicole.
Thank you, Elijah. Have a great day.
Thank you for tuning in to this incredible episode. Your support means the world to us, and we truly value you. We look forward to having you join us for the next episode. If you enjoyed what you heard, please consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. Your feedback is greatly appreciated.